The counter's going to go. Nose is running. Okay.
Welcome to the Get Out There and Get Known podcast. Join Pam Perry, veteran PR strategist, Emmy award-winning producer and publisher of Speakers Magazine, who will show you how to crack the code in getting out there to get known. Each week, she either interviews her media friends, PR colleagues, or she just goes solo, offering you strategies on publicity, publishing, and platform building. So listen up to hear how to get booked on media places and on superstar stages. Now, here's your host, Pam Perry.
Hey there. I am so excited today because we have Deya Direct. Okay, let me tell you a little bit about Deya Direct. She is one of those people that, it says you could talk to your PR colleagues or you could just go solo. Well, this is definitely not a solo show. Deya is actually one of the, Deya Smith, Deya Smith Taylor, but also known as Deya Direct. She is an author, which we'll be talking about her new book, producer, media personality, certified life coach in social and emotional intelligence. Love her, love her. She's so easy to get along with. Let me tell you, I just love her already. She's an executive producer of the SuperpowHer podcast and the creator of the Super Self-Care Power Summit, and she champions self-care and emotional wellness, which is really what this show is about, what we're going to be talking about today with her new book. But most recently, she launched her nonprofit, the Super Self-Care Project, designed to empower women in challenging times of transition, with tools to enhance self-care and overall wellness, via content, events, services, books, obviously. She's a former national senior producer for the American Heart Association, and Deya is a creator of their podcast network, which now boasts 16 shows under its belt and over 1 million downloads. Deya also is a former senior content producer for the national syndicated Tom Joyner Morning Show, which reached 8 million listeners daily for almost 10 years. And Deya remains committed to creating life-changing content. This you may not know, but she was a former Miss Black USA and is celebrated and a sought-after speaker. She's a mentor, and she is no stranger to pushing through and overcoming drama and trauma. Her personal motto is make your pain pay you back. If it happened to you, then also make it happen for you. She has written 4 books. Most recently, what we'll be talking about today is You're Successful, but Are You Okay? Real self-care strategies to preserve your sanity and get through your workday, which was released early this year. So with that, I welcome Deya. Yay! How are you?
Hey,
Deya,
Pam.
how are you?
I'm doing well. Happy to be here
Oh,
with you. I love your fancy introduction.
thank you. Thank you. Here's my hand clap.
I love it.
I was late on my hand clap, but it was like, okay. But it is so good to see you and all that you've accomplished and the pivots that you've made from give us your backstory. So I read a little bit that you were Miss Black USA and you were working with Tom Joyner as a producer, super producer. But was your background always in journalism? Was it in psychology? What was it? What were you doing before all of the things that I read about?
That's a great question. My background, I went to Howard and I graduated as a theater major. So I got my BFA there.
Oh,
And so my classmates actually were the Taraji Hensons of the world, the Marlon Wayans. Like, yeah, we were all at Howard in the theater department together. And so I got married immediately after college, would
okay.
recommend that. So
That's
I
very
didn't go straight to Hollywood, but eventually I did make it there. And, I did just, some small projects, probably the more notable one, besides like, being on some soap operas and stuff like that is the movie Something New. I don't know if you remember that with Sanaa Lathan and Blair Underwood, where she fell in love with the white guy.
yeah.
I was Blair Underwood's real estate agent. So that's
Okay.
my
I've got
that's
to go
my
back
last
and look
claim
at
to
that.
fame in Hollywood.
I remember that. That was kind of like who's coming to dinner nouveau, I guess you would say, so to
I
speak.
like that analogy. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then so basically going to Howard, being in theater, that's tough. That's is pretty probably competitive, I would say. You get people from all over
Absolutely.
the country, the best of the best, and all that kind of stuff. And so after that, you did the Miss Black USA, or that was in
So
between.
while I was in college, I actually competed for Miss Black Connecticut. Strangely enough, yes, I'm from Connecticut, people. Yes, Black people live in Connecticut. Yes, that part. So I get the weather thing there in Detroit, Pam. So yeah, at first I won Miss Black Connecticut, and then I went on to national. So that was while I was still at Howard. So after that, like I said, once I graduated, I got married and I worked. I worked in the United States Senate actually for 4 years.
Oh,
And I worked, in a lot of political oriented jobs. And then, while I was Miss Black USA, Miss Black Connecticut, my platform was actually HIV/AIDS awareness. And I really dealt with it from the perspective of self-esteem, how we make decisions, poor choices oftentimes based upon how, women in particular, how we feel about ourselves, getting in unhealthy relationships that often lead to risky behaviors.
mhm.
So the interesting thing is, as I was transitioning in my career, from direct politics, I went to work for the National Minority AIDS Council at the time, and went on to have different positions working in nonprofit around HIV/AIDS. But that
Wow.
was an issue that was, near and dear to my heart, not only because it was my platform, but because where I was from in New Haven, we actually had the largest HIV/AIDS cases per capita in the nation because
Mm,
it's a small community. So a lot of people were infecting each other, especially through intravenous drugs and things like that,
mhm,
including in my own family. My father passed away from the virus.
mm,
Um, Half of the men, in our family passed away, if not more, who were, his peers and cousins. And so it was awful.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
saw many women pass away. So that's sort of, where that passion came from, but it kind of married my passion for women, for self-care, um, to, it's sort of been a thread, I would say, in everything that I've done, even if it wasn't like directly on topic. And
Mm,
then experiencing, my own challenges in life, um, when I in that first marriage, I was a colored girl who considered suicide when the rainbow was enough, so to speak. So I know what it's like to be on the edge, and I had to pick myself back up day by day. And I did like many people do when you have, tragedy or challenges in life. You just keep going and you don't get the help that you need,
mm,
and eventually it will catch up to you because you've got to deal with your stuff. And
mm,
so in that journey is actually where I realized that nobody's coming to save you, hon. And you've got to heal. You can't fix what you don't face. And I made the conscious decision to really learn how to make my pain pay me back. So that's kind of where that stemmed from. If it
yeah,
happened to you, I believe it can happen for you, right? If it cost you something, I believe that our circumstances, when they're not so pretty, you can use them like kind of like you do with money in the bank. You want to get a payoff. You want to know that it mattered, right?
Mhm.
So you learn from it and then you leverage it. And
Right.
that's how you make your pain pay you back. You don't run from it. You don't hide from it. You own it because um, it happened to you for a reason. B, it can also help other people. And so I spend my life, using all the lessons that I've learned along the way, to not only leverage them to build myself up, but to also help other people do the same.
That's a full circle. It really is. It's like all the things that you've gone through has made you a better life coach, author, doing the events, creating the content, doing the media. So name the books, because they're in order. So let's talk about the last book last. So the first book we talked about, we had was Touch Yourself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
30 Ways to Boldly Live, Love, and Let Go. That's what that book was about. And
right.
the whole concept of that book, even though the title is provocative, the whole point of the book is, you it's your job to teach people about you and not the other way around. You
Mm,
should be so in touch with yourself that people are learning from you. We teach people how to treat us by how we treat ourselves.
yes,
So
yes.
that's really what that book was about. Like, be in touch with who you are, what makes you work, what works for you, inside and out, and then communicate that, so that people are aware, know your boundaries, all those things.
Yes.
And then the second book was Failure is Fuel. And that was really a book where I kind of gave my testimony, and actually ended up being a small little book, but it became an Amazon bestseller. And so that was really based with addressing fear, the fears in our lives. People are afraid to fail, afraid to take risks, afraid to, do the uncomfortable thing or address the uncomfortable thing. But it's really not about the failure. It's about what you learn in the process, and it's about getting back up. And so you use that as fuel to help you to keep going, because again, every situation that you experience, if you learn from it, then it counts, right? If you learn from it, then it's not a
Right,
failure, it's fuel.
right,
And
right.
then the third book, which, to date has been my most popular, at least until this next book, people buy that.
Gets off the ground.
Um, but my third book is Soft is the New Power, Embracing Your Feminine Edge to Win in Love and Life. And so I'm
Mm,
really proud of that book, is because it really breaks down what soft power is, which is actually a political term. But I took the term, so it's the idea of soft power is your ability to communicate with, your adversary, your opponent, someone you're negotiating with, or whatever, to know what makes them work, to be able to speak their language, and to make them feel good about giving you what you want, where it can be a win-win. It's how to talk to people, it's how to communicate in a way. There's hard power, then there's soft power. And so figuring out how to reach people. And I took that same concept for women, because at the time I was around so many, and continue to be, highly professional women who really wanted to um, be in loving relationships,
mhm.
and they were really good at their jobs and highly successful, but they didn't know how to take some of those same skills that they used at work and apply them in their personal life. And so I really showed how you can how energy transfers, and how you can use some of the same dynamics of, knowing who you're talking to, right? We know in communications, knowing your audience 101, right? That's communications 101. Who are you talking to? What is the goal that you're trying to get out of it? What is it that you want them to know about you? And using some of your softer skills to attract what you want, right? Because that's what energy does. It transfers and it attracts. And so a lot of times what happens with women is we're using our hard power to attract men, or we think we're desirable, but in reality, they're not looking for that masculine energy. They're
Mm,
looking for your feminine energy, but we haven't learned always how to appreciate feminine energy, because our
mm.
mamas and grandmamas have told us, look, you go and you get a job, you make your own money, and you handle your own thing, so you don't need a man. And that's fine until you want one.
You want one more sooner than later, right? It's like, okay, so I'm now like the clock is ticking. At this point, it's like, okay, I'm very successful. I'm in the C-suite. I'm 45, north of 45, and there's less and less likely to find a man, because the energy that you're always exuding, what you're saying is that it's masculine into the corporate world or the C-suite or whatever. So I could see that right there. And I like that title, The Soft. It reminds me of Michelle McKinney Hammond. She wrote a lot of books about the feminine energy and just really about women and you know, just the whole singleness thing.
Yep.
And especially for black women tend to quote unquote like be the strong black woman. And so if we're the strong black woman on one side, and then the other side, you want to be like, okay, I don't want to be the running the household and being the person that's like the strong black woman at home. I want to be married and we're running this together. It can be very how do I say it? It's a book that's needed. I can see why that's very, very popular, because I know my mother didn't have it growing up in her generation, where they kind of knew exactly, I guess you would say they had the Doris Day generation. And my mother was a stay-at-home mom, and they never had the same issues. And I was really like the first person really to go to college and work in corporate. And so it was a whole nother level of learning how to be assertive, and then being aggressive, and then like being strong. And eventually it's like those kind of traits aren't really good when you're dating. That's that's not the thing. So, you know, it's like, yeah. So anyway, so now it leads up to the book that we were talking about earlier about you're successful, but are you okay?
Yeah.
And I find that book I was really intrigued by it, and that's why I wanted to have you on to talk about it. One, from the media perspective, that, you know, where you are, you know, working with a lot of celebrities, so to speak. But we were talking about some celebrities that they look successful, but they may not be okay. And mental health is really a big issue. And we were talking about Twitch and Christy, I want to say, what's her name, that had the committed suicide, and she jumped out of the window.
Yeah, former Miss USA.
Yeah, and those two things really to even talk about it just really you know, just take my breath away, because I just
Yes.
can't understand it.
Yes.
And self-care is a term that people are throwing around a lot, especially since post-pandemic and that sort of thing. Self-care, but it happens, you know, it was happening before then.
That's
So
right.
kind of tell us a little bit about how the book started, or when did you start it, or when did you knew that, you know, this was a book that was for this time, and you kind of grew your platform, I guess you so to speak, with events and the whole nonprofit. What was really the instigation for that, or the birth of it?
So, in terms of the events, I was doing the self-care events, you know, pre the pandemic,
Okay.
and obviously that all stopped. And what I did was I created the nonprofit to raise money for people who were struggling during the pandemic, who needed to go to therapy but couldn't afford it. And
Mhm.
so that's sort of where that began. And so the idea for the book also began during the pandemic. A lot of people, you know, myself included, you know, were really struggling during that time. And life didn't stop in some ways. You know, you still had to show up and go to work every day. You had all this stuff happening with, you know, the racial wars, so to speak, you know, with the George Floyd, the pandemic, all those things at once. And then you still have to perform. And these, you know, and we don't always give ourselves permission to feel what we feel. And so, like I was saying, we just plow through, but eventually it takes its toll.
Mhm.
And so, you know, there were a couple of key things. I'll give you a little teaser. There's one story that I talk about in the introduction of the book where everybody can relate to having, you know, being on Zoom calls, back-to-back Zoom calls. And so one day I had a presentation and I was on back-to-back Zoom calls, but I had to go to the bathroom, Pam, okay? And right. So you can already see where this is going. And but I didn't want to miss my call. And so long story short is I made the unwise decision to take that laptop in the bathroom with me. I'll leave it right there. So you cannot imagine what happened, but I do tell it. Yes, it was a trip.
Oh
It
my,
was crazy.
oh my
And the
God.
funny part is, you know, I had to address what occurred. And I remember when I worked for Tom Joyner years ago, one of the things that Anthony Brown, who was a comedian, would always say, you got to go with the bit. And so when I got back on that Zoom call, I was able to laugh at myself. We all laughed about the situation. And I cannot tell you to this day what I was supposed to present about. What I can tell you, though, is that I remember what happened to me. And it was a good sort of a marker for me to realize you are so worried about taking care of other people's business that you don't even take care of your basic needs. Something
Mhm.
is wrong with that. And
Mhm.
so it's like, in the name of being successful and getting the job done, we often sacrifice ourselves. We often sacrifice our well-being. We often sacrifice, the basic things that we need, not to mention, some of the more significant or elaborate things. And
Right.
so that was, kind of a funny story, dramatic story, if you will. But I think it really highlights, where I'm going in the book. And so I deal with things like boundaries,
Mhm.
how to have boundaries. I deal with burnout. I deal with the challenges that people are having right now with going back to work. I deal with, helping people to redefine what success looks like, as an example, because if you think about it, all these people who are being laid off, who are talented and successful people, are they less successful now because they don't work at that particular job?
Mhm.
No. So you showed up at that job as you worked that job as you, and when that job is over, you're still you. So how are we really defining success? Are we defining success based on how much money we make? Are we basing it on how other people respond to us? Or can we give ourselves permission to define what that looks like? Are you
Mhm.
happy, by the way?
Yeah.
What are the kind of relationships that you're building? Do you have
And
people in your life who love you and affirm you? Is that success? You get to decide that, because otherwise you will be left to constantly respond to the outside factors of what make you successful. And so one key thing that I like to share is, in the book, I really did a lot of research and curating, and really use the science of self-care. So
Mhm.
every method that I give, every tool that I share is based in science, right? And so
Mhm.
you get to see what that looks like, even if it's aromatherapy. What is that? How does that work? How can you apply that um, in your daily schedule?
Mhm.
All of those things. Every chapter ends with a save yourself, right? So I give all
Mhm.
these tips in save yourself, and every chapter ends with affirmations. But I looked at some key things that leaders use to start their day, because how you start your day is super important to how the rest of your day is going to go. And
Mhm.
so three things that I like to share are the three M's: motivation and meditation. I'm sorry, meditation and mindfulness, motivation and movement, right?
Yeah.
So meditation and mindfulness kind of go together. How are
Yeah.
you starting your day? Instead of getting on your phone, instead of getting on social media, instead of looking at your emails first, what are you doing to set yourself up for success first? How are
Mhm.
you waking up to your own body and mind? Like, you need to settle in and be grounded in being you and how you want to start your day. And so getting your mind right, being still. It could be as simple as, it doesn't have to be woo woo. It might just be taking time to really enjoy your coffee and being quiet and sitting in quietness and being grateful. The motivation, whether it's an affirmation or a video, what are you reading to,
Right.
or taking in to encourage your own spirit? Because
Yeah.
you have to fill up your own cup. You can't perform from an empty cup, right? You can't continue to pour out. So
Mhm.
before you pour out for all the important things that you have to do in your day, what are
Yeah.
you doing to fill yourself up? And then movement, right? If I like to go outside and walk. You can always do that. It's cold outside. I might do my hula hoop. Okay. I might do some jumping jacks.
Jumping jacks
I
are good.
can I can look on YouTube and do a video. But how are you moving your body and getting in touch with your body? And that's also good for your mental health and well-being, and getting those endorphins going. And so there's physical benefits, and there's also mental and emotional benefits to all of these things. And so those are three tips that anybody can do before they even start their day. That's the one thing you can control
Mhm.
before a crazy day begins: how
That
you begin.
That's true. And so many people start their day with social media and then they're looking at things and they're comparing themselves and then they're not feeling, oh, I'm not on a trip where this person is, or I don't have that kind of car that that person has, whatever, whatever. So one of the things that you said, Deya, was that about the bathroom break during the Zoom. And it reminded me of my mentor, Terry Williams. Love her, love her. She
Oh,
has
yes.
PR.
Terry.
Yes. And I remember she said to me, we were doing a conference or something, we were speaking and I was assisting her. And she says, you know what? I've got to stop. She says, right now, she says, I'm going so much. She says, I've got to go to the bathroom. She says, I need to take. She says, because I can run around all day and no one will tell me that I need a bathroom break.
Yep.
She says, I have to tell myself, stop, Terry. You got 5 minutes. Go to the bathroom.
Yes,
Running
ma'am.
to the airport, running in here. And I remember, at that time I was probably in my 20s, early 30s. And I was like, I didn't realize the depth of how busy she really was. She was handling everything from Janet Jackson to, Cicely, just everybody. Anybody
Yeah.
was everybody, Mary J,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And she says, I need to take 5 minutes and go to the bathroom.
That's so
I
true.
remember that. And then that was before she wrote the book, Black Pain. It only looks like we're not hurting. And
That's
this was
right.
after she had wrote the article in Essence Magazine about her depression. And
Which was so profound, by the way.
oh my God, it was so profound. And it was really like life changing for her from that standpoint. She then really focused all her work to helping people with depression.
Yes.
And, she had a very successful PR firm, but she really said, it only looks like we're not hurting. So that's what kind of your book kind of reminded me of a little bit.
Well, thank you.
You're successful, but are you okay?
Yes.
And so many times people will say, oh, I'm fine, but they're really not. Mental health is, and I don't know if you knew Terry's background was really a social worker. That was her background before
No.
PR. Yeah, she was a social worker. So she kind of went full circle, was just kind of like, she had the empath. She could feel people. She knew people. She could really relate,
Yes.
that kind of thing. And so it was easy for her to do PR, but because it was so much, it was like, oh my God. And so there will be times where she would literally could not get out of bed for days and days, and people had to come to her house and pull her out of bed because of she wasn't okay. And so the whole self-care movement, I mean, something as simple as stopping to go to take a bathroom break.
Yes,
If
ma'am.
you are not doing that, then like you said, there's something wrong. It's like, why can't I take the time? Because we all feel like we have to be so on.
Yep.
And that's not successful. Successful is having peace. Successful is like what you said, are you happy? Really asking yourself those type of things. It may not be, my parents weren't very, very wealthy. They've passed in 2019, but they were happy. They were married over 50 years. They had family. They were happy. And you look at someone who may have a lot of other stuff, but they have trauma and drama, right? And
That's right.
that ain't the cool thing to have. So you wanna have that balance. And so show us the book, because I love the cover. Show us the book.
Here you go.
Yes, I love it. And so that yellow part pops out as being happy, right? That part right there.
Successful. That's real success. Yes.
Yes. That is the whole thing that I really like about.
Let me tell you some of the chapters. So chapter 1 is anxiety alert.
Yes, people
brain fog on a cloudy day. For those who have listen, not just menopause, but menopause too gives you like brain fog. But when you're stressed out and you're overwhelmed, a lot of times you can't think straight.
Multitasking
Conflicts
have brain fog too when you multitask.
Nope. Now, okay, so I talk about multitasking in the book, and the brain can only do one thing at a time, even though we think we can do it all. Conflicts at work, fail up, going through changes. And then the last chapter is, there are more, but the last chapter is heal and be happier. And so, because that's really the point. And, at the end of the day, if you're not well, everything around you will suffer. Your job, the people in your life. So when people say things like self-care is not selfish, it's literally true. But I also show you in the book how self-care is a scalable solution, because workplaces actually make more money and not just have more productive workers, but they're actually more progressive. People are happy to be there and they're willing to work more. And they perform better when they are well, when they feel good, when they feel valued, when they feel cared for, when they have flexibility. And so this all pales out, and you can see it, from a numbers perspective, because we know what matters most: dollar numbers and people numbers. And when you can make more money and your people are happy, then that's a good situation. That's a win-win for everybody.
That is the whole point of it. Really is. You want it to be a win-win for everyone. I love, people can get the book. They can get right on Amazon. I see the people over in Amazon sending a bunch of stars up. So thank you so much over there on Amazon Live. And also,
hey, Amazon.
yeah. So they have it there. And then the other books, if you want to get all of them, and then they want to book you to speak as well. So,
yes,
I just love your energy of
thank you
talking about this and speaking about this. One of the things that, remind me of one of my favorite people that I just love, and I love her since I was young, was Susan Taylor. And one of the things that I would always do when Susan was editor-in-chief was I would read her In the Spirit. And I would get the magazine in the mail, and that I would automatically flip to In the Spirit, and that would talk about the internal things and emotional. I just always loved that. And then obviously, remember, she made a book out of all of her
yes.
essays, right? And I got that, and then she
Me
did
too.
And I was like, I always love that, even though the fashions and the personalities, that was all cool and everything, but I always would go to that first. And so it's one of those things where it settles you, it makes you a better person. The thing that you said about taking care of yourself, you've got to pour from a full cup. We can't just be quote unquote popular on social media or popular with fame and be broke on the inside. So getting rid of trauma and drama, you being a life coach, that you help people with those kind of situations and things like that. So I appreciate your work, appreciate your books, and probably future books as well. Do you have an event coming up soon that we can go to deyadirect.net and find out about?
Yeah, I have local events going on here in Dallas. We're just starting to roll out. So you'll see me you can find me everywhere on social media at Deya Direct, Deya Direct. And so I'll be rolling out, via social media, the events that I'll be doing around the book. So, and yes, I was able to do an event with WellCoa, which is the Wellness Coalition of America, recently, and also Blue Cross Blue Shield of Vermont. So really, stepping up, speaking engagements, with corporations, because, the workplace is literally in the midst of a chronic stress epidemic. And so that is a real statistic. And so, my goal is to provide real solutions that people can apply every day to relieve their stress, but also to have a better life overall, which helps the workplace.
Corporate wellness is really, really a popular term. More HR departments are like looking for corporate wellness speakers or corporate wellness trainers.
Hello.
It's like help our people out because they're quitting, and so that's their job hard, right? So people have to be happier. And they have to learn how to be happier by really taking care of themselves. So the book is called, again, You're Successful.
But are you okay?
But are you okay? That's it. So
yes.
Thank you so much for joining us today for Get Out There, Get Known. You know all about that. But even before they get out there, get known, they got to take care of themselves. So that's why I want to have you on this particular show, because so many times people are just stressing, trying to get out there and get known. But take care of yourself first.
Yeah, so you can last. You can get out there, but then you won't last. You'll crash.
Woo! That sounds like the next book.
Thank you, Pam.
You want to last, you don't want to crash. So that's good. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. All righty. Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Get Out There and Get Known podcast, brought to you by PamPerryPR.com, where you'll get insider tips on how to build your platform, pitch the media, and promote yourself with confidence. Head over to PamPerryPR.com and get the exclusive video training on the 7 must-have marketing materials you need before you pitch in order to be considered in media places or superstar stages.